My name is Rafael Escalante and I'll be presenting on Pozole today. And in my brief presentation, I'll be covering three main topics, which will be the origins, the cultural analysis, and the three main ways in which pozole is made. And even though it's just food, it could be also a way into bringing together people who may have differences and just simply unite strangers and put aside our differences and notice we are in reality have a lot in common rather than more differences. All right, so starting off with origins, I got my information from an article titled "The Sacred, Religious, and Cannibalistic Origins of Pozole" by El Universal, and it had a very religious importance back then, and this dish dates back to 1325 to around 1524. And before it was actually known as pozole, it was known as tlacatlolil, which just means man-shelled corn. And only the elites were the ones who were able to eat this food. And the word pozole comes from another word that sounds very exactly like it, which is pozoli, and it's just a word used to describe how the corn would foam up when it was being boiled. And this dish would be served during the celebrations of the god Sipe Totec, and he was the god of fertility, love, and agriculture. And the main ingredient of this dish was human flesh. And usually this human flesh was obtained by from slaves or warriors from opposing tribes, and the ruler, he would be the one who would usually season this meat, I imagine, to his liking. And those also some other versions of pozole back then that would use turkey meat, and also cholo escuincle meat, which was basically a dog breed that was very famous and popular back then in ancient Mexico. And once the Spaniards arrived to Mexico, they prohibited these practices. So, since the Spaniards also brought pork meat with them, they replaced the human meat with pork meat, and that's how you have your modern day pozole. And now moving on to the cultural analysis. There are three main ingredients in pozole, which are the corn, which is usually always boiled. There is the meat, which is usually either pork meat or chicken meat. And there's also dried red chilies, which are used to give it its flavor and its and its red color, which is very ironic of the pozole. And one thing about this dish is that it's both culturally influenced by the Spaniards, since they were the ones who brought the pork meat and chicken meat, for the modern day pozole, and the Aztecs and other indigenous tribes who made pozole, since they had corn here in the Americas, and that brought together both the meat, which came from Europe, and the corn that was here and very abundant in the Americas and was very important for the Aztecs and other tribes like the Mayas. Also, pozole is usually made in large quantities, which shows that Mexicans and Latinos in general are a rather more collective than individualistic, unlike Americans who are rather more individualistic. And pozole is usually made in a big pot, which is later set up on a table or on any place where you could actually have access to it, like let's say during a party, and you're just able there to go up to the big pot and just like serve yourself. And is also usually smaller bowls that have cilantro, onions, radishes, sometimes avocados, and lemons for you could add on to your own to your bowl of pozole of how much you would like of each. And pozole is usually made during Thanksgiving, during Christmas, birthday parties, and it is most commonly made during winter time rather than summer or springtime, since it's always nicer to have a warm bowl of something hot rather than having something hot during summertime, obviously. And pozole is also usually eaten in a social ambience, sometimes with your friends, your family, or sometimes even strangers, rather than individualistic by yourself. And depending on the people, they might sometimes have the pozole along with some tortilla chips or tostadas. And now moving on to the different ways to cook that it's made. There are three main versions of how it's cooked. There is the red pozole, the green pozole, and the white pozole. And the red pozole gets its color by the red chilies that are used to make the sauce of the stew of the pozole, and the green pozole is gets its color by the green tomatillos that are used to get its green color and give it its taste. And there are also some versions of modern day pozole that are made of goat meat, but it's typically either chicken or pork meat. And since in Mexico they also use the pork head to make the pozole, and since it's not very common here to find pork head, they just like resort to using other parts of the pork to make the pozole. And in conclusion, thank you guys for listening to my presentation on pozole, which the three main topics were the origins, the cultural analysis, and the different ways pozole is made. And like I said earlier today, even though it is very common for us as people to be divided and such, food is always a great way to unify people and put aside our differences and make us all realize how similar we are in reality compared to differences. And thank you guys for your time.